Another explosion has been heard at the Fukushima #1 power plant. The blast was heard around 6 a.m. Japan time on Tuesday, coming from the #2 reactor.
At Fukushima #1 nuclear power plant, #2 reactor, at 6:14 a.m., there was a blast heard near the suppression pool, and the pressure began to fall in the suppression pool. We are continuing the water injection into the pressure of vessels, but the operators who are not directly engaged in this operation are being ordered to be evacuated to safer locations.
The explosion was reported by both the plant operator and the Nuclear and Industrial Safety Agency. They say a sound of a blast was heard around the suppression pool, the equipment that coordinates the pressure in the reactor container. Tokyo Electric Power Company says radioactivity levels on the edge of the plant's compound hit 8,217 microsieverts after the explosion. The figure is 8 times the amount that people can be safely exposed to in 1 year. The operator says the valve to vent steam and reduce pressure inside the reactor had closed, and they were trying to open it when the explosion occurred. It says it cannot deny the possibility that the fuel rods are melting. The company has been battling to raise the water level in the container vessel to cool the fuel rods. The company said half of the rods are still exposed. Now, Tokyo Electric Power Company says smoke was seen rising above the #3 reactor at the Fukushima #1 nuclear power plant at around 7 a.m. on Tuesday. They also say Monday's explosion at the reactor blew the roof off a facility for housing spent nuclear fuel. The facility is a pool for storing and cooling the spent nuclear fuel. The company says its coolant system may have failed as power outages hit the area after Friday's quake. On Monday, the #3 reactor caused an explosion likely triggered when a combination of hydrogen and oxygen ignited. The company said they have determined that the reactor and containment vessel are intact and safe. Japan's meteorological agency says that in the area around the nuclear reactor in Fukushima, winds are blowing southward at up to about 15 kilometers per hour. It forecasts that the southward wind will continue until noon on Tuesday. Tokyo Electric Power Company says the radiation level reached 8,217 microsieverts at 8:31 a.m. local time on Tuesday. That was about 2 hours after the explosion at the #2 reactor in the Fukushima #1 nuclear power plant. Tokyo Electric says the radiation is 8 times the amount people would normally be exposed to in 1 year. The company says the radiation level rose rapidly as it had been 1,941 microsieverts at 7:50 a.m. The Nuclear and Industrial Safety Agency says the level had gone down to 2,400 microsieverts at 8:35 a.m., about 3 minutes after the highest level was measured. The agency says it's investigating why the radiation level is fluctuating so much. NHK has spoken by phone to a local resident taking shelter in Tamura City, about 40 kilometers west of the crippled nuclear power plant. Hiroko Kida said it's really scary to hear about the latest explosion. She said every evacuee around her is watching television to get the latest news. Kida said she's worried about whether her family can continue farming and whether her husband can return to his job at a local company. Some workers at the #2 reactor are now evacuating the plant following the sharp rise in radiation levels in the area. TEPCO says the head of the plant had ordered the evacuation. It says those leaving the site are not directly engaged in the effort to cool the damaged reactor. Earlier, NHK senior commentator Noriyuki Mizuno gave us his analysis of the #2 reactor's current status at the Fukushima #1 nuclear power plant.
So, the news conferences that we've heard, what does this tell us? Well, we now understand that there has been an explosion in the a nuclear power plant. And of course, that in itself is a very serious situation. And now we understand that there could have been an explosion around the pressure containment area. There was about 3 atmospheric pressure. Now it goes down to 1, meaning that there could have been some cracks formed somewhere in the vessel or in the pool, meaning that water containing radiation could have leaked out.
In an Iran compound, 965.5 microsieverts of radiation was observed. And compared to the normal level, that is 10,000 times higher. So indicating that this explosion might have caused some release of radioactive waste to the outside. This is where the pressure suppression room is located. This container vessel is a last line of defense to prevent the radioactive waste from being released to the outside. And it seems that the explosion occurred somewhere at around pressure suppression room. And this suppression pool is one of the cooling systems for the reactor. The water is contaminated with the radioactive substances. So if any crack is formed around this portion, that means that the radioactive substances will be released outside. That is why the very high level of radiation was observed outside. That's why the operators have been evacuated. It seems like a very serious situation is going on because container vessel is the last line of defense to prevent the radioactive waste from being released. And if there's any damage done to the container vessel, that means a very serious situation. So unless the problem is contained, this problem may spread and may become worse. So the release of contaminated water to the outside is a very unusual situation. This could be the worst case scenario for the nuclear power plants in Japan. The number 1 reactor experienced the hydrogen explosion. Well, in that case, the outer building exploded, and the company said that there's no damage done to the container vessel itself. But this time, they are saying that there is a possibility that the damage was done to a container vessel. That means that they are getting unable to contain the radioactive waste from being released to outside. So this could be a worst scenario for the nuclear power plants in Japan. We do need a very accurate information at this time. Yes, because the public is watching the developments and the local residents are very much concerned. So the very accurate information must be released in a swift manner.
All right. Well, we'll keep you up to date on that explosion. We do have updates and a live stream of our broadcast on the NHK World website. Do check that out. The URL is shown on the screen.